good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for this week's AARP Wisconsin show. As you know, we come to you every Thursday at noon via Facebook or our YouTube page to bring you topics and guests. But before we get to our guests for today, as a friendly reminder, you can always go to the AARP Wisconsin webpage. This will have information about upcoming virtual events, vaccine, and other resourceful information. So you can go to the website below. Also, please remember the AARP Friendly Voice Initiative that was launched last year. If you recall, this is a free, you do not need to be a member, and it's open to any age. And you could put a request in for one of our friendly, trained AARP volunteers to call you. This could be a daily phone call, weekly or monthly, but it's just nice to hear a friendly voice on the other end. You could either follow the website or go below to the 188 number to call to request a phone call. Also, please remember that you can always volunteer with us. We'd love for you to join the AARP Wisconsin volunteer family. Even though we are in an epidemic, there are still opportunities available. You can learn more by visiting the website below. So today we always love to have our special guest on, Helen Marks Dicks, who will be talking all about the Wisconsin 2020 or 2021, I don't want to go back a year, budget and what it means to 50 plus Wisconsinites. Hello, Helen.
Hello, Amber. It's nice to be back.
Always good to have you. So once again, we're going to be talking a little bit about the budget, and why is the budget so important?
Well, here in Wisconsin, about 80% of all legislating is done through our budget. And the budget is the one the governor proposed is $91 billion. So there's a lot of money. So anything that happens basically needs to be paid for. And most of that goes through the budget. So anything you're really interested in from government, whether it be local or state or road work or whatever, comes through the budget. So it's worth keeping an eye on.
Absolutely. And I know yesterday you had a teletown hall, which I thought was really great to hear some input about the budget. And if you have any questions for Miss Helen today about the budget, as always, you can post them below and we will take them live during the show. So Helen, you talked a little bit about kind of the dollar amount when it comes to budget. So, and there's a lot of things. So are there any things in particular that would be of interest to seniors?
Well, I'm going to give you the big five that are of interest to seniors because there's lots in this budget that is of interest to seniors. There's a lot for caregivers and family caregivers, and we'll go into a little more detail later. There is attempts to rein in the price of prescription drugs. There is a lot about broadband and broadband expansion and getting broadband into your home. There is a Badger Care expansion. To make sure that we take advantage of the federal money to give more access quality care to people. And finally, there is a little bit of work and save that we've been talking about. There's everything else under the sink, kitchen sink in the budget, but those are the big five that mostly affect older people.
And so that does seem like a lot of information. And we know right now when we hear the word budget and $91 million, we're like, ooh. So if we could do small chunks. So what's in the budget for the caregivers?
So I'm going to divide the caregivers down into even smaller hunks.
Great.
There's stuff for family caregivers. And those are the people that AARP speaks to the most. And the family caregivers, we have over 600,000 of them here in Wisconsin, and they do all kinds of things. And one of the things they do is they spend money, and they spend money taking care of their loved ones. So in the budget, there is a caregiver tax credit. And the tax credit is about $500. And it's a non-refundable tax credit, which means you only get it if you have some tax liability. And what it does is it reimburses family caregivers for some of the money they spend taking care of their loved ones. There are a lot of things you spend money on that aren't covered by insurance or any other kind of program. So that's one of the big things that's in there. That's a program that's recommended by the governor's task force on caregiving, and it's a project that AARP has been working on for a couple of years. One of the other things for individual family caregivers is the Wisconsin Family Medical Leave Act right now is really helpful if you're caring for somebody with a health condition or you yourself have an acute health condition. But it has never been friendly to people with chronic conditions. So the budget changes that and allows family caregivers who are taking care of people with chronic conditions like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, stroke residuals, to use the Family Medical Leave Act to go to visits, to discharge planning and things like that. It also expands it so it covers children, grandchildren, and grandparents. There's also the requirement I've talked about to you many a time about hospitals having to educate family caregivers when the person is being discharged from the hospital. And they also have proposed a kind of assessment of family caregivers, not about whether they're doing a good or bad job, but whether they need more help and whether there are programs, because we concentrate on the person needing care. But boy, there's caregiver burnout. There's caregivers being overwhelmed, and there's caregivers that could use a little help themselves. So that's something that's new in the budget. Then the second bucket, if you will, under caregiving is the programs. And, the family caregiver direct support is going to be our number one priority there. The programs are second, and it gives more money to the ADRCs. It allows them to the caregiver support programs have been for people over 60. This expands them. So they start at age 19 and run all the way up to 60. It gives more money to the Alzheimer's support programs. And so there's a training program for guardians. So there's some things that are programs that get more money that eventually get to the family caregivers. There's an awful lot in the budget for the third bucket, which is the paid providers and professional staff, because we all know they're vastly underpaid and they really need lots of help. We're going to support those in the sense that we believe in them, but they have professional organizations and to speak on their behalf. AARP often chooses to go to the place where nobody else is talking for you. Nobody else is speaking for you. So we look at our individual members rather than the categories of professions. So on this one, we are going to work hard for the family caregiver and then for the programs that support the family caregivers.
And this is huge. This is huge. Yes.
This is huge. These are bills that we have been working on for a while. This is a lot of work. You had me on to talk about what the Governor's Task Force on Caregiving was doing. This is a result of their work. And it's nice that, this should be a bipartisan issue, because our sponsors, when we had these bills before, were Republican. This is a Democratic governor's budget. So I'm hoping that there'll be a good meeting of the minds. Caregiving is such a nonpartisan issue. And let me tell you, you've either been a caregiver, you're going to be a caregiver.
Correct.
Or you're going to need care.
Correct.
And so, caregiving affects us all.
And I do appreciate the fact, Helen, that you are planting the seed of, when our viewers are watching this, they're like, oh, yeah, everything's good. But eventually we, will be caregivers. Or maybe you're a caregiver right now and you don't even know, because it's just come second nature.
Yeah, and you think you're being a good daughter or a
Correct.
good spouse or a good neighbor, and you're actually giving caregiving support.
Absolutely. I know a big topic, and it's been a big topic for a while, but I know it was also brought up on the Teletown Hall yesterday. If we could talk a little bit about broadband and what does the budget propose and why that is also important to seniors.
Well, broadband's a pretty big topic and a pretty big issue. And once again, I'm happy to say a bipartisan issue. So we have a lot of people that lack broadband access. About 28% of residents in the rural areas lack broadband. We sometimes call it high-speed internet access. And the reason that it's so important, there was a time that broadband and internet was a luxury. It was just a really nice luxury to have. You could stream movies, you could do this, you could do that. During the pandemic, it became a necessity. And it became a necessity for a whole bunch of reasons. One is that we went to a lot of telehealth. And telehealth is a good thing, not only for people who don't have transportation, but if you live in a rural area and you want to talk to a psychiatrist and there's no psychiatrist near you, you can do it by broadband. So there's a lot of, and that, of course, our kids all went to school on internet. So there's a lot of good reasons to expand internet. Now, there's 3 things in the budget because there's 3 places you have to expand it. Number 1, you have to have the service available. So that's getting broadband into your area. And that's number 1. So there's money there. There's grants to make sure the utilities and the telecommunications companies actually bring broadband to your area. The second area is that there's a problem for a lot of people. They have broadband in their area, but they need to get the line from like the street to the house, and that costs a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so there's some money in the budget for that. And last but not least, once you get it in your house, it's no good unless you're paying that monthly subscription fee. So there is some money in the budget to help low-income Wisconsinites afford the internet service, which really makes a difference. So they looked at it from all those angles. Now, I have to say that we really supported, our initial support of broadband was very much for telehealth. And the telehealth expansion also exists in the budget to make more health plans use it and the services available, and prohibiting some kind of add-ons for the expense of doing telehealth. So I think that in general, this is an area that a lot of people support. When I started doing this, I thought, boy, this is a rural area, and I'm finally getting into the rural areas of Wisconsin.
Yeah.
This is an urban area too. I have people just outside, you're 3 miles outside of Janesville, and it takes you 15 minutes to download and get your email. So it is a pretty universal problem. I think it has pretty broad support. We're supporting it. And I'm hoping we get some good changes for broadband in the budget.
Great. Thank you so much, Helen. We're going to bring up one of our questions from our viewers. It's coming. Okay, so from Jim, how will you and your volunteers convince opponents of your priority issues to support them?
Well, there's a bunch of things that we always do, which is, we normally go to joint finance meetings and testify. This year, they're going to have the 4 hearings. The last one is going to be virtual. So we will participate in the virtual hearing and let the Joint Finance Committee know what we need. The Joint Finance Committee has also put up a website this year, which they haven't done in the past. And it allows you to talk about parts of the budget and what you support and what you don't support. And so I'm hoping to get out emails and information to the general public about, and our members and our advocates, about using that website so that people can let the Joint Finance know. And you can comment on just one little thing. If it's a story you have to tell about your own life, it makes a difference. But I also encourage people to get in contact with their own elected officials. Even if they're not on joint finance, they make an awful lot of difference. And individual stories make a lot of difference. So we're going to encourage people, our members, and anyone in the universe who will listen to me, to get in touch with their legislators and say why these issues are important to them.
And Helen, I know pre-COVID, you and the red shirts, as we call them, our beautiful volunteers, get in their AARP shirts and attend those type of meetings to ensure that we're being heard. So if you could talk a little bit about how that's changed, of course, but also still how you're making a huge impact.
Well, I have to say it's changed and it hasn't changed. They're still going to do the road show. They're going to go to Whitewater and Rhinelander and Stout, University at Stout. But they're going to follow the local rules about social distancing. But, and as I say, then they're going to do one virtual day. Those meetings give you 2 minutes. It's not a lot of time, but you always have the option to write something. And that's good. And emails are good. And phone calls are good. So you let them know what your opinion is. We are going to be out there. We're probably going to be doing more ads and more public appearances virtually, because this year, I know that there are a lot of people that will attend those hearings. We're not to the stage where we feel comfortable taking our volunteers out to what could be a super spreader event.
Correct.
I'm just a little too cautious, and the organization's a little too cautious. And although those meetings, I love mass meetings and I love stirring the pot, it's just not the right time to do that. It
Correct.
just isn't the right time. So we'll be letting people know all the ways they can influence this process. I'll probably just come back one time when you invite me about where to send your comments, what makes good comments, how to organize your thoughts.
That'd be great.
We could do a whole little visit on how to influence the budget.
No, that would be great. And also, our viewers, or even if you're watching this in replay, are wanting to find ways that their voice can still be heard. And there are ways in a safe manner. So I think that would be a good idea, Helen. We'll have you come back, and you're always invited. And you know that. You can come on anytime you want. So Helen, could you also just give us a sentence or two on other issues that you're focusing on?
Well, there's a whole bunch of things in there to try to reduce the price of prescription drugs. Medicaid expansion Badger Care expansion is a big thing for us, partially because we want the coverage, but also because I'm looking at what the governor proposes we do with that money, including a lot more mental health services and a lot more crisis intervention, a lot more psychiatric treatment and availability in rural areas. So I'm really very supportive of that. We have a little bit of work and save to help people save that are in small businesses, setting up a retirement system. There's a little bit of money for equity and diversity within state government. There's some language about how to do redistricting, a little bit on fair elections, fair and safe elections. And those are the AARP issues. If you're an environmentalist, if you're a transportation person, if you're somebody that's interested in criminal justice, there's a lot in the budget, and it's well worth going and looking. AARP is going to concentrate on our big five: caregiving, broadband, reducing price of drugs, Badger Care expansion, and work and save. But there's lots in the budget. Everything affects people over age 50, because if it doesn't affect us, it affects our grandkids.
Absolutely. And we're all going, if we're not 50 yet, like myself, we will be 50. And these are, topics and that we need to be aware of. And I know before I came to AARP, this might not have been stuff I would have thought about. And now, listening to what's going on in advocacy and just AARP in general, it's really eye-opening about how much is going on out there and how we need to be more informed. And I think AARP, especially AARP Wisconsin, has done a great job.
And also older people have done a great job. When you consider the rate at which older people vote, and older people like to participate in processes like this, and for heaven's sakes, they'd be in big trouble if it wasn't for the property and state taxes paid by older people. We often concentrate on the poverty type programs and seniors in need, but we are major contributors. We really are major contributors to society, both with our wisdom and with our money. And heaven knows when they open up again, they want us to be spending our dollars. So,
Correct.
We
Absolutely.
should make our voices. The budget's a chance to remind them that there's lots of us, that we are good citizens, we're good taxpayers, and we want them to do right by us.
Absolutely. And it looks like we have one more question from Jim. Do you think the legislators' spending plan will ignore a potential 1.6 billion in free Medicaid expansion money?
Well, I think, Jim, that depends on who you talk to in the legislature. There are certain characters in the legislature that I won't name because I work hard at being nonpartisan, who have kind of taken the opinion that over their dead body, will we take 1 penny of the expansion money and because it's welfare. It's not welfare. It's our money. It's going to other states. It's federal money, but we pay it into it. And the impact that that money could have on the healthcare systems in the state of Wisconsin, and just in, even if it's only limited time money, it would make a huge difference during the 2 years when we're going to dig out of this pandemic. And so there are people in the legislature that clearly want to take that money. And Jim, it depends on how they count the votes. When they count the votes, are there enough people who see it as just cutting your nose to spite your face to refuse to take that money? Or will wisdom prevail and we finally accept Badger Care expansion?
So, Helen, you gave us a lot of really great information today, and especially if folks weren't on the teletown hall, what could be some next steps? And also, if people are looking for additional information, what website would you point them to?
I always point them to our website because I try real hard to make sure we keep our priority issues up there. I have a little explanation about what's in the budget. We have our position papers, which are what we've been advocating over time, even when people were running for office. And we will post in that space when the hearings are, what the links are to making comments. I suggest when you get robocalls from us, that you answer them. Just don't hang up, because sometimes it's going to be an opportunity to be linked in on a special issue with the legislature. Open up our emails when you get them. And it might be one of these things that says, oh, I'm just not interested in this. But a lot of them are going to affect you. And, you know, the telephone and emails are going to be important to those people looking for broadband, because you can't necessarily get to my website to get all that wonderful information. And so we will do our best. Open up mail from AARP. Don't presume it's, you know, a letter asking for money or something. Just assume that it's going to be a wealth of information, and we will keep people as informed. I'll work with our communications guy to make sure we're doing radio and newspaper stories. We'll do the best we can to get the information out. Once you get the information, you have to share it with at least one more person. Your friend, your neighbor, your brother-in-law. I don't care who it is, but if you make a call, make sure there's 2 calls made.
Absolutely. And Helen, it's always a joy to have you on, because you're so passionate about what you do, and it shows. So I always love when you're on the show. So thank you so much.
Well, I love being here, and, you know, stirring the pot and getting people, the voice of the people out there, I think is really worth doing.
Yes, and Helen stirs the pot, and that's why we love her. So thank you so much, Helen. I always appreciate you being on. If perchance you are watching this live, or if you're watching it in the replay, we definitely encourage you to share this video also on your social media, or take your family and friends if you think it's information that they should be aware of. For next week's show, next week is all about Brain Health Week, and we are going to have Dr. Gittleman on, who is an MD, all about brain health. He is an excellent doctor out of Aurora Medical. So we're going to be talking to him. So if you have questions or comments, we'd love for you to come back next Thursday. And then also some upcoming events we always like to plug. And please remember, you can find these at the website website below or the phone number. You do not need to be a member. So if there's any of, the Disrupt Aging Book Club, Prepare to Care, there's 2 movies coming up, and also AARP Decluttering and Downsizing. I think now that we've all been at home a little bit more, we're starting to look at the piles of stuff that maybe we should throw out or donate. So all of these are coming up free of cost. And then I also just want to do one more friendly reminder about Small Dollar Big Impact. If you recall, this is a grant program that we launched last year for small grants up to $1,000 for fun, creative, and innovative ideas for nonprofits, local organization, municipalities. So that application is due March 17th. You can find all information below on the AARP website, WISD. Yeah, thank you. And then one more is the AARP Community Challenge Grant. Now, this is from the AARP Livable Community National Initiative. So these are grants that you can use within your local area. Last year, the state of Wisconsin, 4 organizations were awarded. So we would love, of course, to bring as many dollars back to the state of Wisconsin as we can. Applications for that are due April 14th, and you can find additional information at the website below. So I gave you a lot of information there. Please replay this video if there's any websites or information that you need. As always, we thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you next Thursday once again here at noon. And the show, of course, runs about 30 minutes, but we'd love to see you then. And until then, please be safe.